Welcome everyone, and welcome to Straight Out of BPS podcast with Rudy and Jamari. I am Rudy, and through the screen,
Jamari Jones, everybody. How you doing?
how you doing, bro? I'm doing good. It's vacation week for you, right?
Yeah, man. I just been trying to, rest up.
Mm.
It's been tough getting to this point. Report cards already came out, touching base with families before we left for vacation. But it was definitely needed that like this vacation, definitely. I
Right.
know a lot of my counterparts as well in the schools, they were very excited about the vacation. So but we get back to it Monday. So
Don't get the week off.
mhm.
I had Monday off. It was a long weekend. But yeah, so being out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's definitely I like what you said. Definitely gotta like a lot has been happening. Find that time to rest. As definitely, I'm pretty sure. Even the long weekend was great for me. I love long weekend. I think we should move to a 4 day work week. I'm for it.
That would be great.
I'm for it.
Yeah. I think don't they do that in like Europe where they have like
I heard they do that in some European countries, so
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. The world is changing.
Mhm.
COVID has put us in a kind of new era.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm not surprised.
I mean, I think I'm all for it, especially for the academic year. I don't know how other people feel, but I do think that, if we had a shorter week, it might do a little something. I
Yeah,
know it could be more productive. I was reading in the article actually
yeah,
that more classroom time is not necessarily like really good for students, but more exploratory stuff.
yeah. That's
So I mean that's something to be said. I kind of feel like that is kind of true. Um,
yeah. You have to find more ways to keep your students
mhm.
engaged. So it's like that requires uh a lot of exploration or like level of engagement of like creativity
Yeah,
never seen before because um Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Um and when you looking at the screen, if it's not entertaining enough, you get disconnected very fast.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm for it. Um, I can't wait to see. Like we've been talking about changing the curriculum. That's
Yeah,
time. Like
yeah.
as we reimagine what schooling could be like
After this, yeah,
for this. And also making sure our culture is well represented within the curriculum,
yeah.
not just Black History Month.
Right. Woo woo.
Yeah, so this is episode 4. Wow, Jamari, already episode 4.
Episode 4, man. I
Yes,
am so excited.
me too.
Especially because we're talking about representation and
Yeah,
um, educators and everything like that. So I'm excited, man.
me too. Me too. Just excited about doing this journey with you, and I just can't wait. I know we have a big vision. We
Yeah,
laid that there, so just coming in there every episode and the amount of work we put in behind the scene. I'm just excited
right.
where it's going forward. Um, but yeah, our last episode was Representation Matters,
Yep.
and we are continuing this conversation, and we have some guests
Woo woo.
today, which is going to be exciting. Um, this is uh, this is a collaborative work,
Yeah.
and it's also one thing we stress on this podcast. We want to amplify our voices, there's because it's through conversation
Yeah.
and putting different perspective that we can design a better future for the generation.
Right. I think that you know this is something that, people, I know people know about,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily think they hear from the sources.
Yeah.
Sometimes, people of color are not in the rooms to make those decisions about hiring other people of color sometimes.
Yeah.
And if they are, it's very few,
Mhm.
or far in between. So I'm excited to hear from our two guests. I know them personally,
Wow.
and it's been great working beside them, and everything like that. I will also say, if you haven't already, listened to episode 3, please go and listen, share it. Um, Please follow us on Instagram, straight out of BPS Pod. Follow us on Twitter, so BPS Podcast. And then also like us on Facebook, straight out of BPS Podcast. And then if you have any questions or comments, or you just want to share your experience about this topic or any of the previous topics, email us at straight out of BPS pod at gmail.com, and we will share your story. If you don't want us to share it, that's completely fine. Just say that in the email. Um,
It can
so this is, huh?
it can be anonymous, like
Yeah, it could be anonymous. So I'm just really excited about the topic. Of course, I'm really excited about our podcast and working with my boy Rudy. It's been an eye opener, and we appreciate all the support that we've been getting. And like Rudy said, we're trying to make this thing bigger than a podcast.
Yeah.
We are trying to do some amazing things. So really excited, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So without further ado, we're gonna bring in our guests.
Woo-woo.
Welcome, Tanisha and Jihad. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
What's
Hi.
going
Ooh,
on?
thank you. Thank you.
It's we're excited to have you on the show. Um, yeah, and have a conversation. I feel like all four of us are passionate in our work, and we're ready to dive into this conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I'm excited to just have you guys on. You guys have personally, for me, inspired me while I'm doing the work that I'm doing.
Wow.
Just watching you guys, and so I personally wanted to have y'all on. One, because I think you guys are amazing in what you guys do and bring to the school community. And two, y'all just amazing people to me.
Oh, wow. Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
yeah,
big.
Yeah.
so I can kick it off. And the first question is basically just tell us a little bit about how you ended up in education, and we can kick it off with Tanisha first.
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
then how did you get here?
Okay. All right. So my journey is quite interesting. I had a few challenges getting here, but I know one thing for sure is that I wanted to be a teacher, right?
Mhm.
I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I do know that education was never disregarded in my house, right? My mom did not play that. So I was the first to attend, graduate college, the first in my family to get my master's degree. And so during my undergrad years, I attended UMass as a Black Studies major. And it wasn't until my junior year when I really started thinking, what could I do with this degree? And since I knew I wanted to teach, at what capacity? And so I decided to kind of look into BPS. And believe it or not, I was told that if I wanted to teach, I could not teach under having a Black Studies major.
Wow.
I had to switch my major my junior year. And
Mm.
I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. So, in the process of being a teen mom, attending college full time, I got a job with an awesome organization called Bell Foundation. And this organization worked within the school sites.
Mhm.
And it was like an after school program. And we basically taught from a curriculum. And it was just a real powerful experience for me, because that's where I was able to learn the teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew the power of teaching. I knew the power of connecting with students, but most importantly, the power of connecting with teachers as well as principals.
Wow.
So I got here. That's just how I got here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's crazy. I hear your story, and when you ended, like, you know the power of connecting, which is a simple, such a simple but important work, and the work
Mm-hmm.
we're doing today. Because for me, we thought, uh, um, connecting. There's You can't educate anyone without having that connection. You have to establish that connection first,
Absolutely.
then be able to coach or educate anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Jihad?
Um, I went to college with the intent on studying sociology and juvenile delinquency, because at the time that the majors were together, it was sociology and administrative justice. So my goal initially was to come home and work probably in probation or something, because growing up all the way up to college, all my friends or family members in some way, especially the males, were involved in the criminal justice system on the other side. So I always felt like I wanted to help them and be in a position to help them. So once I got there and I graduated, I came home in 2003. I left in 99, came home in 2003. I was just turned 21. And I got a job initially at DYS. And at that time, 2003, 2004, there was a freeze on probation officers. They weren't hiring any. And I was like, okay, well, I'll work here until they open up. And the more I was working there, I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't like what I was seeing go on in the units with the young brothers that were, a part of the system until they was 21. I had just turned 21, the oldest resident there, inmate, but resident was 20 and 11 months, waiting to age out at 21. So I would know a lot of them personally, and grew up with some of them, or some of their older cousins. So opportunity presented itself in 2005 at Boston Day and Evening Academy, and that was for students who were 16 to 23, trying to obtain or acquire a diploma in opposed to a GED, and most of them were considered at risk. So the vice principal at the time of the Evening Academy came and asked me would I want to work there, and I would be working with the same population. So I was like, yeah. So I interviewed. Initially, I would go there in the daytime and then go to DYS in the evening hours. And I couldn't really juggle the two and balance the two. The beautiful thing about it is I ended up working with a lot of the guys that was coming out and their family members. So that's how I got into BPS. And I stayed in BPS to 2009. And at that time, 2014 for 9 years. And I didn't feel like the system, felt like there was a lot of politics and bureaucratic stuff that was going on that wasn't really about education. So I left education and didn't plan on coming back to Boston Public Schools or any public school for that matter. And I was doing a little bit of consulting work with one of my frat brothers who was down in the Washington, D.C. area. Actually, at that time, he was in Baltimore, and it was like post-riot situation. So they was trying to instill school culture and climate. So that's what I would work with him on doing, and was pursuing some other things. And then somehow, out of desperation, a lot of the jobs were taking too long to get back. I reactivated my BPS profile and came up to Boston and interviewed for my current job. So that's pretty much how I ended up in the school system. It wasn't I didn't think I was going to be an educator at all. I just wanted to help people from our community, in a sense, that was going through certain situations and didn't have the opportunities that I may have had, or didn't know how to navigate their ways to opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like both of y'all stories are kind of so different, but like Jihad, you're saying like, oh, you got into this by accident, kind of,
Yeah.
and kind of fell into, while Tanisha, you wanted to be a teacher, and so it's funny to see how, like, Jihad, you left, but Tanisha, you came. You know what I mean? And I think that's I'm interested to just hear your perspectives as we go through your story and hear what your thoughts about, you know, what's going on in the educational system, because I feel like, you know, sometimes I was just telling Rudy that sometimes we talk about educators of color in our system, well, in the BPS system, but sometimes we are not at the table making those decisions about recruiting or retention for educators of color. Even though they know it's a problem, they know it's an issue, but what are we doing about it? And do you have the right people in the rooms? Um,
Um, one thing that Tanisha said that resonated with me was when you said, like, you know, when you were a junior in college, you were asking yourself, what can I do with this degree? And it's so interesting that I had that question. I studied biology in college, and I realized that this was not for me. Uh, but I work with a lot of students who, when they get closer to the end, is just they asking themselves that question,
Mm,
and
mm,
now the question becomes, how can we expose them early on so they don't have the stress that come stress like senior year and junior year college. Stress is no joke.
mm,
They
yeah,
come to the end, and it's like there's a huge expectation, and you said, like, for your family education was the way, so it wasn't just your expectation, it was your family's expectation.
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes that makes the
Yeah.
difference, because you guys know not a lot of our students have that family expectation.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
just kind of literally survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of speaks to how big it is and how important it is to have that family like support and background.
A
And I think
foundation. Hmm.
exactly. And I think another thing that for Tanisha, your story, and you mentioned this, is that you are a teen mom. A lot of young women, or even young men, when they become, you know, teen dads or whatever, they think their life is over.
Yeah.
I think a part of this is inspiring different youth. Like, just because, you know, you have a baby at a young age, or you have have a baby at a young age, that doesn't mean your life is over. That means you have to go another route. It may take you longer, but as long as you get to the same outcome, it
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't matter.
Yeah.
It don't
Amen.
matter.
And it was survival mode for me. So not
Mhm.
only being a teen mom, but I'm going to school full time
Yeah.
and taking a part-time job. So it was
Mhm.
just like I got to survive, but I kept my eyes on what I really wanted to do. So there
Yeah.
was just no question.
Yeah.
I had to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
I'm hyped, man.
and this is gonna be I'm thinking about something that, like, when you say survival mode, like, you know, it's like flipping from survival mode to living mode. That can be a whole on a podcast, but we can.
Mm,
Yeah, I think too. She who better than to teach like resilience and perseverance than somebody that's been through that.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think that's probably why she's, you know, able. One of the reasons why she's able to connect with the students that may have similar backgrounds, because she's a product of the struggle, as
Yeah.
people call it. So I think that's huge.
Yeah. Struggle, recognize struggle. For
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So understanding, yeah, you said that, so, or Jamari used to struggle with class struggle, and it's like, so she's able to connect with the student. So which brings us, like, for you, so as a thinking, how the student can connect with you, but you, who was a teacher of color that made an impact in your life when you were a student, or like, or today?
For
um
me,
yeah, we can start with you.
I was at a school. I talked to you guys about it, called St. Francis de Sales. I was in Roxbury. The school was based on Swahili. The rules of the school was called Nguzo Saba, so it was, you know, the principles of Kwanzaa pretty much. And it was a Catholic school, which later turned to the Imani Institute, which means faith. So it was a faith-based school. But I had a teacher. I think all my teachers inspired me, but I had a teacher in second grade named Miss Kennedy. She had long locks. Um, she ended up converting to Islam while she was there, and she went to Africa and came back with a drum. Um, and she would teach us how to drum, teach us rhythm, and teach us different ways to read. So she would have us read a lot of items. You know, this is when they used to teach phonics and stuff like that consistently. She would have us read things two different times. One, just to read through it, and two, to try to comprehend what you was reading. But I think she spent a lot of time trying to unite. She's always called us young brothers and young sisters, which was huge, because it made it personal. She was able to check us the way we needed to be checked, because like you kind of, I think a lot of times there's a disconnect with teachers and students. They just, you do what I'm telling you to do, and she would actually show us. When we came in the classroom, the whole room had nothing but, people from Jesse Jackson all the way to Jesse Owens. When I can't remember the year, but I want to say around that time when Nelson Mandela came to Boston, she brought us there. We was too young to know what was really, really going on, but we knew who these people were. So she was very, very in tune. Christmas projects would be doing can drives in Grove Hall, and actually going and submitting the cans. So she was hands-on. And I think she had a value on what the community looked like around you. Not only what the arithmetic was or what the lesson plan was, it was also how you're going to impact the people around you when you leave my classroom. And, shortly after that, the school shut down, but a lot of us traveled to the same school. And we got like straight A's and B's. Like it was never an issue. If anything, it was conduct because we was bored. We would have like straight A's and B's and have like a needs improvement on conduct because we start talking and, conversing based off of like we're done with the work. So she always pushed us. She never had, they say no child left behind. She really ran her classroom that way. Mm-hmm. And if you was a stronger student, then you can help with these students who weren't doing as well, because that was positive peer pressure. So she taught us that in second grade. So that's like a small detailed version of what she did. But I think it was the character education, to put it in a nutshell, that she taught us on top of what was on her lesson plan. I think that made a huge difference because it was all walks of life. And we was kids from the projects, from the Mandela buildings all the way to Ruggles and everything in between, Mission. So we was coming from different environments during the crack era. This is 88.
Wow.
So we was walking to school, and this is when Ruggles had just got built, not long before that. So we was there, wow. So yeah.
And I feel like it's interesting to me because I think we talked about it before in our meeting before, is that I have never heard of that school that you went to. And it was predominantly Black. And I was just like, whoa, like we do have predominantly Black schools, but the way you spoke about it, I felt like there was a different culture. And one thing that I think it's so important is that in our schools, it should represent the communities that we're serving.
You better say it.
Absolutely.
So to have so to have different posters of different Black educators or inventors in your classroom, that already puts the kids in a different space. And kind of like, oh shoot, like I know that person, he or she looks just like me, and it makes them, I feel like the energy is just different. Yeah. So I thought that was just amazing that there was a school like that back in the day, and like questions that need to be answered is like, what happened?
The feeder school for it was Page Academy, which I don't know. I think it still exists, but it's they're having a harder time. I don't want to say we're staying open. Yeah. But you would go there for preschool, and then you would go to St. Francis de Sales from which they had an after school program as well, from K2 all the way to 8th grade, and then you graduated and went to another school. But the class names was Imani. Kindergarten was Jaja, which they would call God's gift. So you sung the national Black anthem every day. I didn't know the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem until I went to another school. Wow. Every morning we sung. It was called Harambe. We would get up, we would talk about the success of the school. So the same announcements that the principal was making on the intercoms, we was making in the hall. So those assemblies were happening every morning. It was called Harambe. So when something was good, this person got an award, it was Harambe. You was giving this person 4 Harambes or whatever. And then before we dispersed, we would sing the national Black anthem, and we would sing every verse of it. So that's what it was like ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the familiarity. It's not something that you go around and you just like, oh, they're black and stuff. It's like they look like me, so now we don't have to get over that color line. We don't have to go to where you're from and all that. We're automatically from the same places. Let's get to the education.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we see in those classrooms. You know, I'll let Tanisha speak, but we've had an experience where we had a staff that was reflective of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that class was successful based off of what they were surrounded with. So I think that's something that we don't see. And later on, it becomes a community policing issue because we have police officers that aren't from the community telling you what to do. So it's the same thing. But that's, you know, that's on a bigger level. I just wanted to just
that could also be another episode.
Yeah.
What about you, Tanisha?
So for me, I'm a product of BPS all my life. And my middle school experience was very interesting. It was Wakanda, y'all. Middle school BPS. All right. Early 90s. And I had a Black male teacher who taught history. And he was the truth, never from the textbook. And what I loved about him is that he centered Black joy. Right? It was okay to laugh. It was okay to smile. It was okay to be prideful. Then I had an ELA teacher, a Black teacher, and she was no nonsense. She did not play. Failure was not an option. She held us up to very high expectations. And so what I learned from her was this ethic of hard work, high expectations, and mistakes are just only opportunities. And then on top of that, I had a Black principal. Wow. And that Black principal was a strong, powerful leader. He was very committed to his students. He knew the kids that he taught, right? And he was from the community. And so there were times when he's like, no, I'm not going to call your mother. I'm going to your house and I'm knocking at your door. And so for me, I never knew that existed. So it was just like, that was my first time ever really seeing it. I got a chance to see how that looked. And literally that lit the fire in me. It inspired me. I'm like, okay, this is how it works now. Yeah. So I'm thankful for those experiences, especially for that principal, because he actually gave me my first teaching job. Wow. I still connect with him. Yeah.
So do you think those people play a role into being a teacher today? Like,
I would have to say absolutely. That history teacher is what made me want to teach history in the way that I do, where I have to center it around Black joy and being prideful of who I am and who my students are. Absolutely.
That's right.
That's awesome, because as we also we'll be talking about how do we bring more Black educators in the system. This is a concrete example of what happened when there's more Black educators in the system.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I like what you said, that, like, he centered it around Black joy. I'm pretty sure the curriculum was not centered about.
Oh boy. So Black joy within itself is revolutionary. So you do know that Black joy within itself is revolutionary.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's so powerful because which make me think. So it takes certain kind of, like, revolutionary mind or mindset to get to there, because when you're in the system and your performance based, like, for you to perform well, you have to, like, let's say you have a to-do list at check, but you have to meet those checkpoint of the system. And if they see you not doing those things, so it becomes like, oh, you're not meeting the requirement, you're not adhering to the culture. So therefore, if your kids, like, one thing about, so like how if for standardized tests, if you don't pass standardized tests, so it's on you. It's not on you. The system was built for them to fail, like, in the beginning. So you cannot measure the teachers evaluate how you evaluate the teachers based on that. But also being able to, okay, this is what I'm giving, this is what they need. How can I bring the bridge to make sure they like their culture is centered around the information that they get?
Yeah.
Powerful.
I also would say, you know, and I want to make it clear when we're like going through this, is that the thing that Tanisha said is that her teacher inspired her, right, to become a history teacher. And I think that says something to having more educators of color in our system, is that when we have a high population of students of color, we need a high population of students, I mean, of teachers of color to inspire our students, so they know that they can be that too.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear to our listeners, to people that hear this, is that this is an important issue, and this is an important initiative, and it's like survival mode for our kids, especially right now. So I thank you for like telling your story about that. That's dope. It's dope. Um, so next question. We're gonna hand it back off to Tanisha. So and this is for both of you guys. What is the hardest thing about being a Black educator?
Okay. Oh Lord. Do we got enough? Do we
I'm gonna
got
sit
enough
back.
time? I will say, you know, we have the world's hardest job,
Yeah.
right? Especially in a system that was never designed for us, period. And so I don't really like to use the word hard. I always kind of flip it with challenging. And so as a Black educator, there are a lot of challenges. Constantly trying to find ways to speak up and advocate for your students, constantly trying to create safe spaces for them to share their experiences, trying to survive in a toxic environment. And so for me, I think the biggest challenge for me is understanding that advocacy takes on so many different forms, right? And so as a Black educator, I'm more than that. I'm the social worker, I'm the nurse, I'm the mama, I'm the referee, I'm the comedian, I'm the mediator, I'm the life coach, I'm the cheerleader. I can go on. I can go on. So for me, I just think it's about, you know, constantly reminding yourself that you have that power to shift, you have that power to shake things up, you have that power to cause that good trouble, but just trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go trouble. We're here for it.
Right. I always explain to people about like our roles is that sometimes we spend a lot more time with our students more than their own parents do. And so like we become those figures that kind of are nurturing them. So that's where we our roles are like infinite. So
Absolutely. And I just want to add that that's my blessing. Like I still connect. Like this one student that I taught years ago will actually be graduating from Columbia State, and she's going to law school, and I still connect with her. Right. So those are like those blessings out of that hardness and all of that challenging stuff. Right. They still remember me. They still connect with me.
yeah.
And so I'm thankful for it. So although I see those challenges, I also look at, you know, those wonderful blessings. Like she says, I will never forget you and I will never lose you. And so, you know, I love that. It's the perk.
That's dope.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's very huge.
Yeah.
You got it, Jihad.
Yeah.
So on me, I think she covered a lot of it in a nutshell. I think the biggest issue that, you know, I think I see is just like she said, is working within a system that wasn't designed for you, wasn't designed for your people, wasn't designed for your community. You know, even the first, you know, board of education was like what, early 1900s. Don't quote me. It's between 1902 and 1906. That was John D. Rockefeller. So his goal wasn't to make sure people were successful. His goal wasn't to make sure, and this, when I say people, it wasn't our people we're talking about.
Right.
So if they're talking about their own people with the lower end of their people, then throw yourself in the people that was fighting to even get a foot in the door. It definitely wasn't designed for you. So I think I see a lot of people who, you know, like Tanisha and other people who I think work hard to work within that parameter.
Mm.
I think that's the struggle I see, because they're still trying to pass on the joy to their students and it be okay. You know what I'm saying? We have educators that can't even laugh too long in a room without looking suspicious.
Yeah.
What's going on in here? You get what I'm saying? So even that, you're kind of fighting a system. You're working within the parameters every day. And that's a hard thing just for the educators. And then we're impacting children who have not even been exposed to a lot of positivity. Like she mentioned toxicity. I think even in her story, when we talk about like coming out of the struggle or whatever, our parents, no matter what they was going through, was pushing education on us because they strongly believed that was the thing that was going to kind of free us.
Yeah.
So our generation was in tune with what was going on outside. We was in tune with the deterrence that was being set up by the system, and we fought and persevered through that system. They made sure that they never made a generation like ours again.
Yeah.
So now we're fighting against the children of those who they abolished a lot of those things for. These are their kids, meet the parents. This is it. So I think that's the balance. I don't like to use the term white privilege. I heard in a PD we did, at our job called white advantage, which is something that's different. That's something that we see a lot of. And if it's not, and I don't want to go too far to the left, but basically, if it's not about the population you serve, then what are you teaching them? Everything is Eurocentric. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not making it a racial thing, but if we got to call it what it is, everything's Eurocentric. So from the languages that they learn, we went over that the other day, is English, French, Spanish, Spain. These are all Eurocentric. These are your mandatory things until you graduate. The way math is taught is not taught the same way the originators created the math to be taught. We have to learn it almost secondhand. Everything we do, the structure of the school system is not for us to be successful, but to comply, spend more time doing discipline within a classroom than we do in passing on positive images and positive messages. So I think that's the hardest thing, is knowing something's wrong and you're a part of it. That's what I believe is hard. And a lot of us as educators of color, we struggle with our livelihood, being affected by going against the grain. We struggle with our own moral compass within that system. You know what I'm saying? It's like trying to keep your clothes clean and all white inside of a muddy atmosphere.
Yeah.
You ever try to do that? You ever try to wear all white to an event? You can't spill nothing on it. You got to maneuver somewhere. You can't sit on the wrong thing. That's how it feels. I'm trying to draw a parallel, but that's how it feels. And then you have the people who are like, all right, well, I know I'm gonna get muddy, so we're the people that kind of get in the mud to pull someone out. And you got other people that never been in the mud telling you what to do. So I'm gonna use a couple of analogies in my explanations, but that's how it feels. So you struggle. Some things you learn to speak about. Sometimes you got to sit back and watch. But that's always been my struggle since I became a part of both systems. Because I was working at a place where I see where the failures of this system put them at. And now I'm in this environment and I'm seeing the parallel. So that's, the consistency. So that's what I think my struggle is, the moral compass associated with doing that.
I think it's one thing that you said is like knowing that the system is bad, but like you're still in that system trying to do good. I feel like it's hard because for me personally, right? Like I became a guidance counselor. I'm like, yo, I want to do good by my kids. Like I have seen, past guidance counselors not do so well, but you go in blindly like, yo, I'm gonna make a difference. I'm gonna make a difference. And then you're in it and you just find out, like you said, how muddy and crazy it is, and you get bogged down. Then you're just like, I really can't do nothing.
I think we can.
Well, and so that I wanted to just jump in and say that that's the issue, right? We've been so conditioned to normalize dysfunction. And so I know what my purpose is. So when I'm sitting in that classroom, I'm decolonizing social studies. No, we're not we're not saying age of exploration. We're calling them invaders. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do, right? No one discovered anything, right?
Right.
So that's my fight.
Yeah.
And I think you fighting the good fight, because those are the pockets of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I would say the cleanliness, that we see in the building, or in our buildings, throughout BPS, is that there are the people that are in those, I don't want to say in the pockets, but in those spaces that are taking their environment within that structure and making sure their environment's clean. So kids or students have a place to look forward to going. I see people rushing to get to classrooms like hers. A few other people, I see them rushing to get to you guys' offices. Just to have that one moment of positivity.
Yeah.
That may be the only positivity they have. And when you look at the hours, they're around us more than their parents actively.
Yeah.
The interaction is nonstop for 6.1, 6.3 hours, right? When they go home, they might get 5-6 hours of sleep, a couple more hours when they're tuned into to jump. So when you're around them, that's almost like a fourth or a third of their day that they get type of positive interaction. And I think that's the time that we have to kind of change that outlook and perspective while we can. And that's where you see the difference. Like a person, they'll be like, well, that kid's an F student and they're making a C or they're making a D. That's huge if they never seen success. So the measure people use mentioning like standardized tests, like who set these standards, right? We're teaching to what standard? You know what I mean? Where we get the new edition of the book, you know what I'm saying? And we talked about that before too. Like, I don't think people are in tune with the population that they serve. And that's what makes it, I don't want to say unsuccessful. That's what makes it dysfunctional, as the term she used. Like, they're not seeing the positivity and the reality of what they're learning.
Wow.
If you can't personalize what someone's telling you, you can't personalize a lesson, you can't personalize a conversation, it means nothing to you.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? We try our best, even in communicating, to put ourselves in each other's shoes or try to identify our experience with that experience to kind of make the connection. We're in a lot of places where there's no connection and people are performing under the facade or the idea that there's a connection when there's not. You know what I'm saying? Just because the phones, people pick up the phones, I mean, they're talking. You get what I'm saying? So I think go ahead.
I also think like, for a long time, the blueprint we have is whiteness. And that's what we that's where everyone was assimilating to. So until and that's why I have a problem with norms, because every time you're trying to do something new, the response is it's the norm. This is how we always been doing, and this is how it works. It makes it feel like, okay, so just because we've been doing it for so long doesn't mean it's the right way. So, and right now we're living in such a revolutionary time that everything can be challenged. It's challenging the norms and finding like the root of everything. And even like in school, like, of one thing I think engineering 101 or something like that, good foundation lead to strong structure. Like, if your foundation is not good, your building is not gonna be good.
Yeah.
And then yet it's always a problem going back to the foundation, because the problem is the foundation. Because the more like, you keep patching the top of the building, like, trying to keep it strong, like, it's never gonna be good. We need to break down the building, break down the foundation, and rebuild for us. And that's the issue, like, because I think for whiteness, breaking down the foundation is an attack of identity, and some people aren't having that conversation yet.
It'll expose people's fears. It'll expose people's lack of competence.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a gentleman I work with that's like a mentor in the building. He does counseling, and he always says, like, just because people are qualified don't mean they're competent.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're good. We're good. We've learned up north in New England to be the best presenters, to have the look. Where we set the standard for the nation. A lot of times we're out of tune, but if we can convince other people that we're in tune, then they'll just follow along. We don't have people that want to really abolish the system. And I don't want to say, kill the system, but you got to destroy to rebuild. Some people don't want to destroy. They, like you said, they want to patch it up. And if the structure, we know that the structure is centered on Eurocentrism, is centered on supremacy, then why do we not want to destroy that? The same reason why we don't want to level the playing field economically, because you might persevere. You might end up being great. And I think that we've seen pockets of that from, our ancestors all the way to our people now. Anytime that the door was open, somebody held the door open for everybody else to come in. Once they know that, they're like, yo, never open that door again. Build this door with a hole they can pass stuff through. And then we'll find a way to do that. So I think a lot of times, like, you're saying revolutionary right now. I think people caught up with the facade of that too. Because everybody, I talked to Tanisha a while ago and I said, like, everybody marching ain't a soldier and every soldier ain't marching. You know what I'm saying? That's a fact. You understand what I'm saying? So it sounds cool to like, yeah, we're going to do that. But people don't really want to do it because they're going to expose their own weaknesses. That's, you know what I'm saying? That's what I was saying. Like the people that want to reach over and pull you from the mud, but don't want to get their pants and hands dirty. They're not effective. Yeah. There could be someone delegating because they know what it's like to actually do it. Yeah. That's different. Yeah. But most of the people don't want to do that, but those are the people that stay clean. Wow. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times those are the dirtiest people. And I'm saying it figuratively, but a lot of them don't have that education. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, I'm culturally competent. It's like, it's impossible. You're not of that culture. You can be aware and familiar with the culture, but you're not competent in it because you're not of it. Yeah. So you teach to it. So, you wouldn't give me a job. You wouldn't make if the whole population was Asian, the entire population was Asian, would you hire all African-American teachers, all Black teachers, all, you know what I'm saying, people that can't identify with their culture? You would have a disconnect. Yeah. No matter how much you studied their culture, their history, you studied and learned and dealt with people, it shifts all the time. So the only person that would really have a keen sense of what's going on is a person that's of that culture. Yeah. You would never have me and all my friends teach your kids if you're not from the same thing. You wouldn't do it. Why is our community based on that? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that's why curriculum is very important. Creating curriculum.
Yeah. Which brought us to one question we want to ask you. Yeah. Is like, what are your thought process when you creating curriculum for your student?
So when you talk about curriculum, right, you're talking about the what of teaching, right? Yeah. And before you can even get to the what, right, you got to learn your babies, right? In order to build those real life learning experiences, right? You got to build real authentic relationships, right? And I love how Scudder just immediately mentioned this whole idea of being culturally competent, because you can be culturally competent and you can be culturally responsive, right? But I think those words are oftentimes thrown around loosely. You can't be culturally responsive if you don't know the culture you're responding to. It just don't make sense. So my thought process when I'm creating is I have to be very intentional, right? I use these 3 R's. What am I teaching? Is it relevant to my students' life, right? What am I teaching? Is it representative, right? Do my students see themselves in whatever assignment that I'm giving them? And I am a revolutionary. Shout out to Fred Hampton. So when I'm creating that, does what the curriculum I'm creating, does it invite students to kind of question and challenge the norms? They have to question and challenge it. They have to critically analyze some of these structures that are put in place that promote social justice, right? My whole goal is to create real agents of change. So I think Black kids and just our Black and brown babies they really need to see themselves reflected in their books, in the classroom. I feel like there needs to be more room for Black voices, Black achievements, Black stories. And I'm not just talking about Black History Month. This needs to
Right.
happen on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to be very intentional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this is powerful, and we like hearing you, like knowing that there's you teaching. It just excite me because like this is the kind of teacher that I want my kids to learn from. This is the kind
Man.
of I think my student need because being like and you mentioned intentional because I'm pretty sure like the same thing you taught 2 years ago changed. It's not the same thing you thought you teach them today because history evolved and you have to
Right.
keep that and you have to keep changing and you have to make sure like they learn the information that like because you're a teacher, you're teaching them things and then when they go home, what did you learn today? And those are the things they're gonna like keep building for the rest of their life because this is what you taught them. So I'm truly loving uh like the passion, the work you
Oh
do.
yeah. When I as a social studies teacher, and I'm teaching the Eighth Amendment, saying, according to our Constitution,
Yeah.
the amendment says no cruel and unusual punishment. But let's tell a story of Cleve Browder. Let's talk about how he was destroyed and how he committed suicide because he sat 3 years in prison
Mm-hmm.
Right.
because he didn't have bail,
Yes,
right?
amen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got to be very intentional.
I love it. I love it. Um,
So
Can we expound on that word too?
Yeah.
Intentional, because the key word is intent.
yeah,
I mean, if somebody's doing something intentional, it's purposeful, right? Or on purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you got to you got to start questioning what are people's intent in working with our students and what is their purpose.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? That's why I think there's a gap too. Like you don't see it. I think, I can only co-sign what I've seen
yeah,
her do as an educator and the environments that she's been in.
mm-hmm.
While I've been around and either walked into in the middle of a, session or been next door and can hear it, the interaction is both ways. It's not, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tanisha, but I think she learns from her students too
Yeah.
every year. There's
Oh,
some
yeah.
people that don't want to admit to what they learn. They'll only talk about the highlights of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? You don't see a lot of teachers going hard to find out why am I not connecting with this person?
yeah,
You know, there's a lot of people, well, these people get it, so I don't know what your problem is. I don't see that. You know what I mean? I see a lot of the good educators, including herself, just really like, that one, I can't connect with him or I can't connect with her. What is going on? And they'll go meet with the social workers. They'll go meet with the other staff. Like, what is your connection? I saw you talk to the student. They talk to you like nothing. They're not like that in my class. Well, I try this. And this usually works with that person. And I'll see her and other educators, not a lot, but a few shift some things to kind of get that student in tune. And I think that's going above and beyond your own self. To reach those students. And I think that's something that we got to see too. And some people aren't invested because it doesn't affect them.
Mm.
They can treat a kid, you can suspend a kid or treat a kid foul because you're not going to run into them and their mother at the grocery store. You're not going to see them on the corner in 10 years asking you for change.
Right.
And
right.
they'll look at you like, that time you suspended me, my whole life changed. Or that when I had to go to court because of that, my entire life changed because of that. They don't have to look that in the mirror.
yeah,
Because they can leave and the school that they teach at is a conversational piece at their dinner tables about these kids that they're helping, but they don't see those students. So for that student to reach back, after law school, right before law school and say like, yo, that thing you taught me, that's impact.
yeah,
And there had to be an intent and a purpose in your approaching them students. We don't see that. There's people mad at kids or students because they can't connect with them. So they'll turn it into something else.
Yeah.
So they can avoid having to make that adjustment to their curriculum and their teaching style because the teaching styles evolve too with the student body. The student that was in the classroom in the 90s is not the same as the kid in the early or mid 2000s. The kid that we had 2 years ago is not the same. Post-COVID, quarantine
Constantly
students are
evolving.
different.
Yeah.
Are different already. So there's there's some people making a choice,
yeah,
to get to know their students. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Which is you're right, which is used, and we know the terms like intent, um, impact outweighs intent,
Yeah.
and when intent is so, for lack of a better word, intentional, purposeful, and passionate, you see a lasting impact. And that's why your former student, like, who's law school graduated, is still remember. That's why you're a teacher today, because of the impact that your teacher had on you.
And it's crazy because I can still call my teacher. I can still call that principal who gave me my
Right.
first job.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So,
this
yeah,
is so powerful.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's dope. Scudder, I'm gonna ask you your question. So does being a dean of color impact your work as a dean, your position your position in the school, or your relationship with students?
Absolutely. Um, I don't want to say as a dean. I would say my expectations at the particular place that I'm at, or
Mm-hmm.
what we're charged with doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it impacts the students in a positive and in a negative way. Because I work amongst other deans. Our ideals and our backgrounds and our intent may be different. And currently, I feel like it's all black. Well, I don't feel like it's all black males. Visually and physically, it's all bigger black males. They have a certain look to them. They have a certain background to them. That speak a certain way. And within that, you kind of, I hate to use the word enforce. You're kind of implementing other people's agendas sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has a different style of doing it. I think I come from a background where I was doing social work and doing SSD work in a different building. So I was able to kind of have a conversation where kids will understand what's going on when I say discipline. I think discipline has taken on like a punitive definition. But discipline is really the ability to control yourself. You got self-discipline, right? If you discipline, I'm showing discipline, you're refraining and abstaining from doing certain things, right? That's not what I see all the time. It's like, tell them to do this or else.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand discipline that way because I came from, you always hear me say school culture and climate, because that's what I'm about. Climate is like the temperature of the building. How you come in the building can let me know every day, let me know what kind of day you're going to have.
Yeah.
How you leave somebody's classroom or go through the hallways lets me know what kind of day you're going to have. If you laugh and you make jokes every day when you come through the door and today you're not doing that, I gotta deal with that first. You get what I'm saying? And then sometimes it's like the stern piece, like for instance, having all males. If you never had a positive male figure in your life, you never had nobody tell you what to do that was a male, or you have issues with men. That's for young women and young men.
Mm-hmm.
The response may be different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that's a hard situation because in our capacity, you don't get a chance to even learn what that kid's background is. And I came from a place where I would know that before you even came to the school.
Yeah.
Whereas I just kind of get where I'm getting. And you get a radio call. I hate to use the Karen term because I don't really use that, but that's what it is. I don't like what you're doing. I'm calling these people to come through, and these big black dudes, come through your door with a radio. If I hear radio coming through my door, I'm automatically in fight, flight, fight or flight or freeze, because I associate that with a judicial system. So if I come to class, I could be coming to drop a teacher off something, and the kids will say, "What did we do?" That's not a good impact to have in school. You get what I'm saying? So I think being black and being a dean of color, it kind of keeps me in tune with what's going on. But sometimes I'm struggling with, what are we enforcing? How are we enforcing it versus, did we get the chance to talk to that kid? There was a time where I wasn't with suspending anyone. And then there was a time where I was suspending everybody in this segment to make a point.
Yeah.
And, Tanisha probably talk more than I can on how it impacts them in class. But the one thing I do pride myself in and I'm confident in is that anytime I have a real disciplinary issue with a student, I get to a point where they understand why the outcome is where it is. They will tell you that, like, nah, Scudder gave me a chance. He talked to me about this. I'm at a point where I know a lot of their parents. I had some of their parents as students before. So they already know my background. And then I think the positive piece for me is that, like, I'm from where you from. So you can't pull those things. And that was something that I learned when I was in HBCU. You couldn't do that. You don't know what it's like. You don't know where I'm from. You couldn't do that. Because all teachers are like, yeah, we do. and we're from where you from, and we went through all of that, and we still were successful. That's why they can't pull the same thing in your class. You know what I'm saying? She got, you know, no disrespect, like she wasn't Brenda had a baby. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She went and turned that around. You can't tell me something. You can't tell me something about, oh, you don't know where I'm from. So now that that barrier is out the way, what's the real issue? And I think that's like how I choose to do the disciplinary job. I'm not always perfect. Sometimes I got to learn from people. I had to learn from a teacher. I mean, from an SSD person that just became an SSD person about 2 years ago. And he teaches me stuff to this day.
Yeah.
And I've been in education some longer than him. But I also learn from them. They'll give me their feedback. But my main piece, and I'll end off as this, is I'm able to communicate with them. And I don't have, like, I don't do the courts. Anybody that know Jihad knows I don't do the courts unless it's absolutely necessary. Even then, I'm trying to find a different option because I know once you go in there, you can't be Khalif Browder. I've seen a million Khalif Browders. And no, they may not have hung themselves. They may not have hung themselves, but they participated in an activity which they knew was suicidal activity.
Yeah.
Drug use, so they killed themselves indirectly as a result of that wrong turn. I know a kid right now, well, he graduated, but he was 19. He was like, yo, when they send me to court, I'm going to adult court over this fight. The rest of them was juveniles or whatever. He said, yo, I can't, like, and there's a kid that gave, you know, my counterpart a hard time all the time in the high school. He never disrespected me once. But he would see me in the sneaker store. He would see me in the, so I wouldn't do anything to you that I wouldn't do outside. And there are people teaching, deans, whatever, in our system, not in our building, but in our system that put kids in those positions and they turn around and it doesn't affect them because they're not going to run in. They don't even go in those places. I got to go to them places. My kids got to go to them places. So I carry it as if that is my kid.
Right.
Or if I can't be in touch and my kid got to go through that kid's community, how would they treat my kid based off of how I treated them?
Wow.
So
culturally competent and culturally, he knows the culture that he's responding to.
Yeah.
That's the difference, I think. And I'm not always perfect at it. Don't trust me. I'm always learning something new. But that's the one thing I pride myself in. And I'm around. I'm always around. You know.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the differences that with teachers of color, majority of them live in the community that we're serving, and knows what it's like to live in that community and grow up in that community, and can understand the way our kids feel. And so, one, we can speak to that, and two, we know how to navigate that with them. Especially with you being a dean, instead of just going, you know, let's suspend them, let's give them a 5-day, but, you know, really reflecting on what does that look like long term? How is that 5-day suspension going to impact our kids? Are they going to get into more trouble with not being in school? It's different case by case, and
they missing Miss Milton's class.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
This is my class.
We've had kids suspended, and the only work they will do is Miss Milton's class. I just want to say one piece too, and I'll leave off of this. That I don't yell out the school to prison pipeline, but I speak on it a lot because I've been in both sides. And one thing I do notice about BPS now, when I came back that I didn't see before, is the wording and the paperwork that's associated with suspension. The hearings, right? If I say I got a hearing, you ain't thinking of suspension, you're thinking of what? Court. If I say I got to file an appeal, you thinking of what? Court. Right? So the terms like detention, detaining, like a lot of those words, you know what I'm saying? A dean was somebody that was like overseeing the school, period. The daily interactions. That's not what we're seeing now. You're seeing a lot of enforcers. You're seeing a lot of, pre-police work, pre-court work, even social workers. You don't get a chance to highlight the cool stuff, dropping off food at homes of people in need. You see the 51As. More than anything. So a kid or family don't want to talk to you, don't want to give you the information for health insurance to get mental health help because they figure there's going to be an outcome or a hidden agenda to get you involved in court and have these people in my house. So, we see that. And I think it's so, the structure of these buildings now, in public school systems, really across the United States, but specifically in the Northeastern region,
Right.
is almost turning into like this structural sit down, do what I say or else environments. And if you don't do what I say, then your parents got problems.
Yeah.
And their problems always end up somehow in the court system.
Yeah.
Am I lying? And that could be academic. You could have a parent home every day telling their kid to log on, the kid won't log on right now.
Yeah.
And if they don't log on for a number of days, you have to file a 51A, which is usually associated with what? Neglect. That parent ain't neglecting their kid.
Yeah.
The parents there, they're eating well, they're doing everything they can. The kid is choosing not to perform, but it's promoted and pushed. File that, because that's what it is. And it's not taken away from the people saying to file it, but it's just showing where the system has become.
Yeah.
In a matter of a year or two. Not even a year. It's what, a year next month?
Next month.
It's become that already. So if you have it like that from far away, imagine what it's like in person and close.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The court, there's so many people, and I'm not talking about the students that are a danger to the school and everybody around them. That used to be the couple of kids we grew up with. There was that one kid in class. Everyone knew what that person was doing. We're almost marginalizing these kids to where it's like, either do what you're told or we're going to treat you like a criminal.
Yeah.
So many words. We'll use it, they're delinquent. But if I say he's a juvenile delinquent, what do you think of? A criminal. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what I see now. And I know, for me, I charge myself with not being that person that contributes or attributes to that. And there's no student that can say in my life, or a juvenile that can say, Scudder got me in court. Scudder put me in a bad situation. Scudder, had the cops come to my house and stuff like that. I'll come to your house before I send the police.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'll address you directly any other way you want to do it. We can be professional with my tie and talk to you and have a conversation. But I'm also going to be in the park outside after school and on the weekends with my children comfortable. So I don't have that type of energy with certain students. And I don't think that we see a lot of people that are invested in the communities that they serve.
Yeah.
Just fly out the parking lot, not because they have an appointment, because they can't wait to get out of there.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So
I
don't know. And I also look at how people, my daughter one time didn't want to do something that was, she wanted to go to Plymouth. I didn't want her to go to Plymouth Plantation. I called Tanisha to get a curriculum for her.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I didn't know the history behind it, but I reached out to a person that was an expert in articulating that to younger kids, because I only knew how to talk to adults and teenagers about it. And my daughter did a whole packet. And then next time she seen it, like, you know what I learned from you? And then not too recently, about 3 Fridays ago, my daughter was able to drive past Plymouth Plantation 2 years later and understand what that was about now. Wow. So that's what I'm saying. That investment from a kid that didn't even come to school, that's how I know the work she does impacts people beyond that realm of her classroom. And you also see other teachers taking notes on what they do. So that shows the investment, I think, in education. And that's a community thing. Yeah. When our people were going to schools, before there was a public school system, it was a community thing. The community was raising children. Lessons were getting passed on from elders and people around. We don't see that now.
And we need more of that. And we need more of it. I'm tired. I'm tired.
I'll step back.
Yeah, I will say that, Jihad, when this pandemic happened, and we started school in September, and I work closely with the dean I'm working with now. It's been such a huge blessing to have him in a different capacity where he's helping me make calls home. He's helping me do more home visits instead of dealing with, yes, he deals with some discipline stuff, but more so like the kids see him in a different capacity now because he's doing some of the social, emotional calls home, making sure kids have everything that they need, because on my caseload, I have 164 students, and which is like the highest we have in the school right now. So he has taken on some of that responsibility with me. And if there's something that, he's like, Jones, like, I'm flagging this to you because you're more of the expert, but, he knows what's going on with the kids as well. So it's been such a huge help to have, him in a different capacity. And it does make a difference, especially with the way that he is communicating with the kids, and, the kids know him and everything like that. They look at him in a different light.
Human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He gets to be human.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's a what other light should they be looking at him in?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You're almost a robot, and you're taught to be almost inhumane in your style or in your approach. And by human, I'm saying inhumane. I'm saying taking out the human aspect, taking out the feeling and stuff like that. Like the individual that you speak of, that brother got a degree.
Yeah.
That brother was a very passionate person.
Yeah.
That person to cry in front of another man.
Mm-hmm.
However, the visual of him is the big black guy that comes through roaring like a lion.
Yeah.
And our counterparts tap you on the back for doing that.
Yeah.
The lion in the jungle scream into the ground and make everybody run.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. That's when you become an enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to wait to an element where we can't be in the person? We can't yell down the hallway to where that person now is allowed to be a human, is allowed to interact, and is allowed to actually reach people. So where now he can have a conversation with that person and change their attitude or get them to reflect on their own behavior. Hence, showing discipline.
Yeah. Well, that disciplinary and enforcer, as you call it, is that you're disciplining and enforcing whiteness, like and like the whole military style, like the authority figure, like sit down. If you're not sitting down, like I'm gonna report you. You have to go to the dean, and then when they send the kids to the dean, they're in the office chilling because you already have that connection. You met the student where they at. You already understand what was going on. But I guarantee you send that kids back to class, the same issue is gonna present itself because the teacher is not able to understand that you're enforcing whiteness and the student is not conforming to it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the deeper question is, I wouldn't even say whiteness, because I think there's some people that have a genuine, a genuine concern to want to understand the population that they work with. What I would push and say is that there's a bigger push to sit down and shut up and be seen and not heard, to only have a voice. And when I tell you to have a voice, and you better say one of these things or else. And I see that as part of the infrastructure of what was set up. Why was Boston Public Schools set up in the purpose, or public school system? I say Boston because that's where it originated at. But why was the public school system set up? It wasn't for you to be a thinker. It was not. It was for you to go work within an industry, which I talked about before with home ec, right? The general education degree, pretty much, right? Diploma was to cover the basic skills so you can go through one of these places. If you were going to be a thinker, you should go to the exam school. You should go to the private school. Those were set up for the people that was going to be in politics. Those were set up for the people that was going to be, the entrepreneurs. But the general public, it was paid for. That's why it was free education. It was almost like a down payment on you working for me for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And if I'm lying, I'm flying. Horace Mann, that wasn't what his job was.
But I want to, when I say whiteness is not based on the whiteness is the system.
I get what you mean.
Like so yes, we have non-black educators doing a wonderful job, but sometimes so for me the question here, how you showing up for black and brown kids outside of Black History Month? How you showing for black and brown kids daily, and and how you using their culture in your lesson, not to a quick fame for flashes. That's it before. Whiteness is the foundation. So every time when you challenging the system, the norm, you challenging whiteness. So showing up for the kids, using their culture for and your lesson plan, using their culture, you teaching them their history, and not just like when it convenient, not just on a assembly on Black History Month or once a month assembly.
Right.
So every day, Black culture, brown culture, Black pop culture need to be at the center of every curriculum, lesson planning.
Absolutely.
just when it convene you, and not just when there's something dramatic that happened in the news, and now you want to showcase that you care for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
After that, you go back on the cycle. Everything is fine. Everything is Gucci, and then
Right.
until the next thing happened, then we brought all like So it's constant work, and it needs to be done like 300 like every day,
A regular basis.
regular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being mindful, there's an awesome author by the name of Dr. Love, and just also being mindful that you're not doing something. She added a language to it called spirit murdering. I have experience where a teacher thought, right, that she was doing a good thing. And so she grouped a whole bunch of our kids up and threw them in the auditorium to watch Selma. Now, Selma's a very powerful movie. Like, I cried. And I can just remember the faces of those students just hurt, right? Like, Miss Milton, this is just not our history. Like, there's more to us. So
Right.
you have to like be mindful, and then also acknowledge it. When you see someone who's not doing what they're supposed to do, you got to check that. You got to check it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you call decolonizing. You have to decolonize the whole situation, from the curriculum to the language that's being used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people are, I think that some people of color are scared to
Rightfully so.
to like go against that or to correct someone sometimes, because they may feel like their job is at risk, or they don't want to step on too many toes, or they don't want to be labeled as, you are that black, angry black person.
Yeah.
But we have to move beyond that and know that we are doing this for like our kids, our community, and things, and not be scared of I guess the repercussions or what people think, because I'm to the point where like there are other jobs. Like you can make money a lot of different ways. But I'm to the point where like I won't allow my kids to be damaged anymore. They're already going through so much stuff. They don't need to be damaged where in the place that where they're supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good point, Tanisha.
Yeah.
Also, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we look at how we were conditioned by going to school?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like what we see now, like we spoke about, like the economic threat is the new threat when you're in a position of working as a teacher, or working under somebody, right? But I've been saying this lately, like within the last 2 years, even at my children's school, you notice how adults move when an actual principal, right? That's the administrator or the leader of the school, right? Comes into a room. A lot of us move as if they're our principal from when we was in school. So you can kind of see the conditioning that's been happening for centuries.
Yeah.
That you almost learn once you have children, you get fed up, you start speaking up like, yo, they're the manager of that school. You're not in charge of me. You're like, I'm not your student. I think that's the same thing that we see like within our building. A lot of us will fall back. And I'm saying us as people of color because I got that student loan to pay.
Mm-hmm.
My rent's due. And if I lose this job, it took me 4 or 5 years to get this job. That's the threat. That's the threat that I see happening. So I see a lot of people fall back and won't say anything. And like, we'll be in different rooms and you can notice it's the same people speaking up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, the people speaking up have more to risk and more to lose than the people that's not speaking up. Yeah. But it's been almost a conditioning to where it's like, yeah, you better chill if you want your job. That's the same thing.
Right.
That's the same thing that was happening when they was colonizing. Yeah. You gotta chill out. You know what I'm saying? If you say something, it's gonna make it worse for all of us. You've seen that in Nat Turner's, revolution. You've seen that in Harriet Tubman's and many other people who we don't know their names. But it was almost like the conditioning, like don't say nothing. And I think the hardest thing is to create the conflict. I said, you guys, create conflict between people that look the same.
Yeah.
Because within that conflict and confusion, I can still control what's going on.
Yeah.
I can dictate what's happening if I get Jamari to go at it with Rudy.
Yeah.
Because Jamari's gonna tell me all his issues with Rudy. And he's gonna say some things to Rudy when they're arguing, but he ain't gonna say everything. But I know the other piece he didn't say.
Yeah.
Jamari and Rudy the same thing. So if I can keep that conflict going, then I can dictate what's happening because I'm in control of that situation.
Yeah.
And that's typically what I see BPS hiring people or in these structures in the building. That's what happens. There's conflict amongst the workers who have the same agenda. It's not a question of, what it looks like when you have Black educators in the building. I think we know that. We know what our households look like when everybody's together in the same place. I think the question is why they don't want to work for the structure. It's not that the people aren't qualified. You picking and choosing who's coming to the interview anyway. So if I can pick 3 so-called people and 2 good ones that push my agenda, when I present them to the people that look like me, our people will be like, yeah, they're not fit for our culture. Well, that's who came. Not the 75 that you turned away. This is who showed up. Because then I can ultimately pull who I want. So it's the same thing. Why do people not want to work for BPS? Why do people leave? Why do people get almost to where they can retire and quit?
Wow.
Because they all see the same things. These conversations are being held across the nation in public schools.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? But there's a structure that is not meant for you to have a school like that. And if it is and it's successful, the funding will be cut. There will be downsizing. And I can only speak for, my own experience. But like I said, I've seen a team of all Black educators in the structure and work with a population that wasn't considered to be successful. They impacted a whole school for years. And the kids that you thought you wouldn't like was able to go into high school with a different attitude because of who they had as a team. There was a time where all their teachers, all their educators were Black. One year I saw that. And this was the population of kids that was causing havoc for the entire school. Yeah. And they went into that classroom and they went in as freshmen who were in a different level. Wow. And it was almost destroyed again by people who were out of tune with the culture. You understand what I'm saying? So, some of you guys probably experienced that, but I know I saw that and I was like, why would you disassemble the team that was all Black and successful? Yeah. The same reason why these other programs are disassembled over time. Or whatever happened to that school, or they didn't get the money, they didn't get the funding no more. You affect their pockets, you affect their economics. So then once you got rid of some of them other people, the other people will conform. That's cracking the whip. Yeah. The school system is a golden whip. So, benefits, right? Status, pay, but you got to be quiet if you want to keep this position. Yeah. So that's my opinion.
No.
Many years. So
completely understand where you're coming from. And thank you for sharing that. And so my question is that now we have that understanding, and Tanisha is a prime example of how impactful Black educators are, a lasting impact. But one thing, Jamari and I were when we were thinking about this topic is let's forget the system for a minute. What can we as Black educators do to attract more educators? How can we have because I ended up education by default. Jamari did, and so did you, Scudder. Tanisha, out of the 4 of us, was the only one who knew from the get-go. So we ended up, I struggle a lot. And because I struggle a lot, I'm like, I don't want my the future. I want to help the future generation break out that cycle. So now, being in this position, how do we attract more Black educators in this field?
So we know representation matters.
Yeah.
Right? We know that every Black and brown body that's sitting in front of us depends on us, right? We know that there's power within our presence, right? And for me, I think the conversation should be bigger, right? More than just hiring Black teachers. Trust me, I'm sitting on the hiring committee, right? I am Issa Rae, right? I'm rooting for everybody Black, but I think we now have to stop pushing that conversation more of after we recruit, we got to retain.
Yeah.
We got to keep them.
Yeah.
So you retain, and this is just my opinion, by holding these schools accountable for the commitment of what they throw around a lot, right? Ensuring diversity. How does that look, right? Holding schools accountable for their commitment of ensuring equity. How does that look? Right? Holding schools accountable for their commitment of inclusion. How does that look? right? Providing opportunities for us to grow, right? It's bigger than a PD for me. It's bigger than a book club for me, right? So for me, it's like literally just trying to recognize, that there are a lot of talented African-American teachers out there, very diverse, and putting them in position so that they could influence.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Put me in a position where I can shake the table.
Yes.
Turn it over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm up zoning on the growth part because I know a lot of people, Black educators, who, from my perspective, they didn't stay at the school they were at because they were not allowed to grow, and they have the same chances as their counterpart because they don't have the same like chances at failure. So it's like more like a one and done. Like, and then like as opposed to the coaching, okay, this is like the coaching part, like, and then giving more chances to grow. Because if a 1 year teacher, a Black educator, first year teacher come in, and the mistake that doesn't have to be major, but it's just like it's not conforming to the culture. We back to the culture, and it's a problem. And you see, the counterpart do the same, be in the same situation, and the part 4 or 5 years, the counterpart is in the leadership team at the school.
6 months later, they the principal. Yeah.
They are bouncing from school to school, trying to find
not qualified. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So like more conversation need to happen. We need to hold the system and the school accountable.
Right.
And I feel like having more conversation might invite more educators of color having this conversation and understanding more what they have to go through, and also come together to have more voice, because the more voices we have on situation, I feel like we'll create change.
Yeah, but it comes a point where I'm tired of talking, right? I'm tired of them voices now. What we do? What's the next step?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We say it. Now, how else we moving now?
Yeah.
Right. And also, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, man. Every brother ain't my brother. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a harsh reality. I think it starts within our own community. And how we, like, she mentioned maintaining.
Yeah.
It's good to get it and acquire it, but how do you maintain it? I think we don't have like true support systems. And that's what I'm saying. The conflict is created purposely.
Yeah.
We tear each other down.
Yeah.
Indirectly. I don't think it's always intentional that people are breaking each other down in their jobs. I just think that like we start comparing ourselves because of the structure. It was set up for you guys to do that. And I think that when we appeal to people's senses, they gotta see growth. You're talking about the people that's one and done. What I learned to not do anymore, what I used to, it ain't for the culture. I don't know how broken that person was when they came into the building.
Yeah.
Or how on edge, and they might have been looking for this to be their last chance. And it wasn't. You get what I'm saying? So I think that like we gotta find out where people are at and what is their buy-in to the actual job, other than the pay scale, the pay grade, and the title. Because there's some people that's just there for the title. And that's all colors, really. There's people that's there for the paychecks. That's all colors. Some people that aren't investing in the kid. I don't care. There's people on your street that don't like the people that lives on their street.
Yeah.
And they look like me and you. So I think that's the biggest issue, because for me, that's a bigger enemy than the other people that may not be from our community or may not look like us. Is the person that looks like me, but you implement something that's of destructive nature for my children and for my people and even my co-workers, because I see people lose momentum. I used to be a person that would be more like, it comes out sometimes in certain topics, you'll hear me like hop back on it, and I spend more time learning how to fall back. It's not because I'm being quiet, because I'm scared. I'm paying more attention, and I'm trying to think like a step ahead sometimes, and sometimes we end up overthinking. And we drive ourselves crazy because we're trying to solve problems that aren't for us to solve.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying? There's people that don't want to reflect on their work or don't want to reflect. And I think that's the thing that we don't ask. Everyone's going to have I call it their representative at the interview. Your best words and your best presentation and everything. And even the teacher, I'm not in that hiring committee, but they'll have the lesson plan and the mock lesson. And look how great this is and innovative. And then you see them, I went to Harvard, I went to Yale, and I'm this person. And then you see them in the room and it's like, they can't even get the kids to sit down and be quiet. And it's not because they're new. And it's not because they don't look like us, because they don't really care of what's going on. I see some teachers be like, we're not going to do that today. I need to know how my kids are feeling. I've heard you say that. And that makes a difference because they got to think that you care before they care what you think. That's what that mentor says all the time. And I took that and I was like, wow, he's right. Like, if they don't care, if they don't think you care about them, why are they going to care about what you got to say to them? Yeah. And I think that's the real measuring rod, not the standardized test, but how is your lesson articulated by the people you taught? And we don't see that. There's like one measuring rod is based off of standards of people that don't look like you. Right. And I see, and I'm not just, like I said, you're not even from the culture. There's people that's in our building. For instance, we have a program that's dedicated to we have a Haitian population that's separate in a subculture from the rest of the school. You can't put a bunch of people that never went through what some of the kids been through, language-wise, culture-wise, family-wise, and tell them what to do. You understand what I'm saying? Which is why some of the teachers are very successful, because some of them are from Haiti. Some of them been through certain things and have Haitian families and understand the structure. So they can deal with the parents a little different than me, who's never been there and don't know what it took for that kid to come over here other than what I read on their social history report. Right. So if that's in that small pocket, then what we looking at the rest of the school? When I walk through the hallways, I'm looking at people of color first, and I'm like, are you from the same place I'm from? I'm not talking about Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. I'm talking about the same economic status. Or are you familiar with the economic status that I grew up
with? Are we facing the same oppression?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the difference. I mean, like, because you can move out of the community, but some people are still in touch. Yeah. Right? You understand what I'm saying? There's some people that live in the community and they're out of touch. Yeah. So I think that the screening has to be there, because that's how you maintain something if they feel like they're a part of it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? If they feel like they're a part of it, then they'll feel like they're of it. If they don't, then they're just there. And that's what you'll have spinning their wheels. And we also got to look at, this person's status is what keeps them in that job, where they went to school and how many notches they got in the belt. There's people that have 1 million degrees. They've been lifelong students. They got 1 million degrees. They make a lot of money and they don't even come in contact with students throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, that's what I see. And I'm only speaking from outside. I'm not in the classrooms, at least not at that capacity. And I just look and I'm like, wow, like I see the struggles of, people trying to fight the system, and they'll have enough people that look like them trying to stop them from doing that. Yeah. That's harder. Yeah. That's harder. Because I already know what I'm facing over here. Like if somebody's attacking you this way, you can defend yourself and prepare for that attack. It's the person that's coming from back here that causes the bigger problem for me. Because I don't even see it coming, and it's more damaging to me. Yeah. Because I wasn't even thinking to look over my shoulder. That's what I think is going to start internally. And like she said, the conversation is done. Like, don't insult my intelligence. That's, what you probably seen from me in some of those meetings. It was like, what? Like, like when I say like, what? That's when it's like, I done heard something that insults my intelligence.
I believe that's why brother Jamari had us on here. I think he heard the fire in our voices, man. We shook the table.
But so as we're wrapping up, I just want to thank you guys for coming on. I know that we can talk about this for days. I mean, hours and hours. But one last thing, if you guys had any final words, whether it's like words of encouragement to other fellow Black educators, and if you don't, that's fine. But I just wanted to end it on a positive note of encouragement, or it could be a quote, it could be anything. And then we can end it off that.
I would definitely say, if I had an opportunity to speak to all Black educators, right? I know that we have an enormous responsibility, right? We got to carry ourselves. We got to carry other educators. We got to carry our Black and brown babies in front of us. And I know that some of the demands are extremely hard. And I would just say, continue on holding your babies up to high expectations. I know we tired, but we got to keep fighting. I know the burnout is real, but we got to keep fighting. I know the demands are heavy, but we need to continue on screaming loud, and then we need to move.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Realest ever. I think I could only piggyback off of what she says. I think she speaks profoundly. I would say make sure you designing your approach to where your position can be filled if you left, but you can never be replaced.
Wow.
And I think, once you internalize your job or your career, it's not a job anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people that they can't get rid of you at certain buildings.
Asset.
And that's right, your asset. And I think once people recognize that and they get immense confidence, not arrogance, but immense confidence in what they do, you can't deter that. You can't break that down. And I think a lot of people have to come to grips with what their purpose is, like Tanisha says, to know what their impact's going to be. Because they can fire you any day. They can hit a button, you're no longer working there. But they'll spend the rest of their time trying to find someone that was like you. And the more of yourself that you give, the more your individuality, the less likely they are to be able to replace you. They can fire you, but they can never replace you. And that'll say a lot about the environment. And if a lot of people come into that, come into themselves and what their purpose is, then it's easy to do the work on that behalf. It's hard to do the other spot, but it's easy to be yourself. But a lot of people aren't bringing their self to the table. So they're lost and trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing. So that's what I would say is just, be yourself and bring yourself to the table and make sure what you're implementing is what you want to represent you long after those students are gone out of your classroom and long after your job is gone. Yeah. How will people speak of you when you're gone? You know what I mean? So if a lot of people came to the table that way, you would have a different type of unity within the buildings. You would have a more effective curriculum and a better, I would say, like, I won't say just community, but you would have a better environment and school culture, because that's what we always talk about, school culture. What is the culture? Well, who's there?
Thriving. Yeah, thriving.
So that's it. Just personalize it more.
So
that was big. Thank you to both of you. Like I'm receiving those words, like
receive it and believe it.
Receiving. It's been such a wonderful time, pleasure to speak to you both, to learn from you both. Yeah, I'm still amazed by the conversation and the amount of experience and information you guys bring. And I feel like Tanisha, I feel like I was in one of your class. This is how your students feel after a class. I want to be in that class because no matter how I'm feeling that day, I know I'm gonna get my dose.
You gonna get that Miss Milton, yeah.
Yeah. And Scudder Jihad, it's hearing you talk and like when I see a brother in education, it melts my heart because and how you ended also got to me because as brothers we are like as black educators, but more especially brothers, like we are asked to leave ourselves at the door to enforce a culture that's not ours. Like I see your feeded on, proudly black educators on. Like this is not how we were supposed to look.
Yeah.
Like to be in this position, so we have to leave that at the door and conform to a culture that's not ours in order to do that job. But being able to do that work and being yourself, that's a true testament, and I just appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
I felt underdressed once I seen Tanisha. I was like, man,
Nah, no.
But I
And
do
I
want to
usually
say,
dress
like,
up, but I
me,
was like,
and
not today.
Scudder, we're a team. So could you imagine both of us together? So when we
Yeah.
work together, we're real powerful, and the kids see that. And
Mhm.
so I'm so grateful to have that, because we don't have a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Right.
been it's been dope. It's been dope, man. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you guys.
All right.
Well, that's a wrap. That was a wonderful conversation, right? Um,
Yeah, it was great. I think that they hit on a lot of good points concerning educators of color, and the need for them, but also how it impacts the school and the community.
yeah.
So I thought it was great.
And what I thought was powerful is just like when we talk about impact, those are like lifelong impact. Like
Mhm.
we're not talking about like quick impact or
Yeah,
especially when Tanisha talk about it's like her teachers to her and not her to her student.
yeah,
That cycle started with her teacher, and you probably started way beyond that. We know like someone did that for a teacher. So
yeah.
so, and we sometimes when we talk about cycle, it can be like be seen as a negative way, but positive cycle,
hmm
like
It's like a butterfly effect.
reinforce positive cycle,
Yeah,
how to create lifelong impact.
yeah,
Yeah, this was awesome.
yeah. It just made me think about the teachers that made a difference in my life
Same.
and how important that is. And I hope that I'm doing the same for
Yeah,
all my students that I'm serving. It just reiterates how important our roles are. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And not only in the school system, but being a part of our community.
yeah,
Um, so I just think that's dope. It definitely put a lot in my perspective. I mean, a lot in perspective for me. And I hope that you guys that are listening also it puts you in a different perspective as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. This is episode 4.
Episode 4, baby.
That's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Till next time.
Yes, straight out of BPS.
Podcast.